Hey guys, my name is Gabby. Welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to be doing my January wrap-up. The month of January has been a pretty rough one, not gonna lie. 2020 has not been off to a great start for me. This really weird reading slump kind of mood this whole month, and I'm really like upset because I set out to do a couple different bookish videos and like challenge kind of things that I wanted to do this month, and then I ended up getting in a really bad reading slump because of it, and I wasn't enjoying anything that I was picking up for the most part, and it's just been a struggle bus this month. So this month, because of those things, is one of my worst reading months that I've had in a really long time, unfortunately. And not only numbers wise, because this is the lowest amount of books I've read in a month in a long time, but also content wise, because I wasn't enjoying most of the stuff that I was reading, so it was just very frustrating. So I did end up reading 9 books this month, which I know still seems like a lot, but because I was not enjoying almost everything I was reading this month, it just made it really frustrating. And in the entire year of 2019, the lowest amount of books that I read in 1 month was 10 books. So I mean, this is the worst reading month that I've had in over a year at least. And then as far as genres go, I read 2 thrillers this month, 1 horror novel, 1 sci-fi novel, 1 historical fiction novel, 2 romances, and 2 contemporaries. It was very all over the place as far as the genres I was reading this month. Then as far as ratings go, I did have 2 5-star books. One of them was a reread, which is why I did that. And then I had 2 4-star books and then 5 2-star books. So it was definitely on the lower end, but I did have a few in there that I did enjoy, so at least there's something. And then as far as male versus female authors go, I only read 2 male authors this month and 7 female authors this month. I also did want to make a note that this month I read 4 books that were either near 500 pages or over 500 pages. Let's just jump into what I actually read this month. So the very first book that I picked up in the year of 2020 was Little Secrets by Jennifer Hillier, and this one is actually an ARC copy. This one goes on sale in April, so huge thanks to the publishers for sending me a copy of this. This one is an adult thriller, and it follows from the point of view of this woman whose son goes missing, and then she hires this private investigator to look into where her son is, because like the investigation has run cold. It's been over a year and they haven't found anything. So she hires a private investigator, and the private investigator finds out that her husband is cheating on her, and then she kind of loses her shit and she's gonna do anything she can to not also lose her husband. And this thriller was really entertaining. Like, I will say, I'm glad I picked this one up first. This was a 4-star book for me. It was good. Like, it wasn't one of the best thrillers that I've ever read, but I was definitely interested in this book almost the entire time. I will say the first 100 pages or so were kind of slow, but then once it picked up, it really picked up. And I was surprised by where the story ended up going. Like, I know a lot of thriller readers might not feel the same, like they might predict this more than I did, but for some reason I just didn't see any of it coming. So I had a great time reading this book. I thought it was really entertaining, and yeah, like I said, it was 4 stars. It was a good start. However, the second book that I read this month was Dr. Sleep by Stephen King, and this is one of the books that's over 500 pages. And I also did an entire reading vlog dedicated to this book, so I will put that link in the description if you missed it. This book was the Stephen King that I decided to read for this month because I'm a really huge fan of The Shining, and so I had very high expectations going into this one, and unfortunately I really did not enjoy this book. I found it to be really boring, and I feel like nothing really happened and this story wasn't really necessary, because if you didn't know, this book follows the character Danny Torrance from The Shining, like the kid in The Shining. This is him as an adult, and it's kind of talking more about his shining abilities. And then there's this cult called the True Knot that is after him and after like anybody that has The Shining. And honestly, this book feels a lot more fantasy than horror to me, which is maybe part of the issue that I had with it, but I was just really disappointed by this one. I ended up giving it 2 stars. It was just not a great time reading this. Third book I finished this month was actually a reread, and that was The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and this was an easy 5 out of 5 for me. This is a reread because I got the audiobook downloaded literally as soon as I finished my rereading my favorite books that I did at the end of December. I was doing that vlog, and then literally the day that I posted that vlog, I got the audiobook checked out from the library of this book. So then I was like, oh, should I still read it or should I just return it? And I was like, you know what, it's been a while, like I'm just gonna reread it anyways. This book was so great. Like, I cried listening to the audiobook and I just loved it so much. And I love that Evelyn's character isn't perfect and that she has a lot of flaws, and I just love everything about this book. So this book was the shining light of this month, I swear to God. The next book I picked up this month was also one of the only shining lights of this month, and that was Long Bright River by Liz Moore. This book is an adult thriller, but I would say it's kind of more like of a mystery and literary fiction vibe kind of book. And this book follows this female cop who is working in this really small town that's kind of overrun with the drug scene. Like, the opioid drugs are really, really popular in this small town. And so all these women start getting killed and like going missing in this small town. And the cop, like our main character, is really concerned because she hasn't heard from her sister in like a month. Because of her sister's drug addiction, they kind of like lost touch and they don't really talk as much as they used to. So she hasn't had any communication with her sister in over a month, and she's getting really freaked out and she thinks that her sister has been killed. So in this story, we follow this female cop as she's trying to track down her sister, and she's discovering a lot about like the corruption of the police. And I don't know, this sounds like something that I usually wouldn't enjoy, but for some reason the writing in this was just very compelling and it was just so good. Like, I could not put this book down. I was very invested because I really do love reading about sister relationships in books, so maybe that's another reason why I ended up loving it so much. But I loved the main character's relationship with her sister, and it was freaking heartbreaking. And I just thought that this book was so freaking powerful and so beautiful, and I ended up giving this one 4.5 out of 5 stars. Like, I really, really loved it, but I think you have to go into this book knowing that it's not really a thriller, even though it's being marketed as a thriller. It's more of like a slow burn mystery, and it has like a literary fiction writing style. So just know that going in if you do decide to pick this book up, but I personally loved it. So the next book that I ended up reading this month is Credence by Penelope Douglas. The only reason why I ended up picking up this book is because I really, really enjoyed Birthday Girl by Penelope Douglas. Like, that is one of my favorite romances of all time, and I was really interested in this book because I was hearing a lot of controversy about it because it's about some very, very taboo relationships. It was just not for me. This book was like definitely not my kind of romance and not my kind of thing. This book follows this girl who is 17 years old and both of her parents die, so she's gonna go live with this uncle who's not her actual uncle. He's like her dad's stepbrother or something of that sort, so they're not blood related, but she's gonna go and live with him, and they live in like the middle of Colorado where it snows really bad. And then she kind of gets in this weird romantic relationship with the uncle and his 2 sons. This book, I don't even know honestly how to describe this book. I actually DNF'd it after like 50% of the way through it because I could not. Honestly, this book wouldn't have even been that bad if it wasn't for Caleb's character. Like, I just absolutely despised Caleb's character with everything in me, and like, his character I feel like is everything wrong with romance. Like, he's a bully like 100% of the time, rude and like Christian Grey controlling type, and I just can't stand that in a love interest. Like, I literally can't. So that's the main reason why I hated this book so much. But I don't know, it just wasn't for me. It's not my thing. I ended up giving it 2 out of 5 stars. It just was not for me. The next book I picked up this month was also another romance, and it was Marriage for One by Ella Mace. And this is another one of those romances that I just think isn't really for me. This book is this very kind of like dark and moody romance. So this one is about these people who get into a fake marriage because of this property that they both want control over. Like, she wants the coffee shop and the place was left to her husband, but she wasn't married when the person died. This guy offers to marry her because he also wants ownership of the property or whatever. So they get into this fake marriage, and then it's kind of about how they're slowly like falling for each other. And this book was just, it was very slow, it was very boring, and I just didn't like either of the main characters. It's so cheesy too because their names are Rose and Jack, and like there's so many references to like, we're like the Titanic, and it's like, so freaking cheesy. I don't know, this book was just trying to take itself like way too seriously, I think, and it was trying to be way too like dark and moody and mysterious, and characters like Jack just really don't interest me. Like I just really don't like characters like Jack. Like he's too rude and annoying, and I don't know. Again, it just wasn't for me. I ended up giving this one 2 stars. And then the next book that I picked up this month is How to Walk Away by Catherine Center. Spoiler alert, this was another really disappointing book. And this one is like an adult contemporary book that is stealing the plot of Me Before You. Okay, but seriously, so it's about this girl who gets engaged to this guy Chip, and they're in an airplane when they're getting engaged because Chip is a pilot and he wants to take her like up in the air, and then he crashes the plane, and then she gets paralyzed from the crash and can never walk again, and he walks away without even a scratch on him. And so this book is kind of about her journey to recovering and being in the hospital for a long period of time, and Chip being a douchebag. I don't know, like the main romance in this book isn't even between her and Chip because he's such a loser, but then the romance that takes place in this book is kind of between the main character and this doctor who's helping her in the hospital. And the romance was like fine, but it was also kind of like out of nowhere. This book was fine, I guess, but I just never felt emotionally connected to any of it, which is weird considering the subject matter. Like I feel like this should be something that I'm crying my eyes out over, and it's just not. Like I just never really cared. The ending of this is just so bad. Freaking cheesy, like holy crap. This is definitely up there as like one of the cheesiest book endings that I've ever read, that I was just like, what? I hate with all these books, I feel like I'm just complaining this entire video, but I'm sorry, I've had such a bad reading month, and this was a 2 out of 5 stars as well. I did not enjoy this at all. So after reading 3 2-star books back to back to back, I decided why not pick up a 780-page book called Wanderers by Chuck Wendig, which was stupid, of course, because if you're in a bad reading slump, why on earth do you pick up one of the longest books on your TBR? I don't know. And I actually did do an entire reading vlog just dedicated to this book as well, so I can link that down below if you missed that one. But this is a book that I had some high expectations for because it's this sci-fi post-apocalyptic novel that just sounds really cool because it follows this group of people who are sleepwalking and they can't wake up, and anytime somebody tries to stop these people from sleepwalking, they start to like have a seizure and they're like gonna explode. This group of people all like joins together and they're all like sleepwalking in the same direction, and you're trying to figure out this whole book like what is going on. And the main character that we're following is the older sister of the very first sleepwalker, and then we also follow from the point of view of the scientist who's trying to figure out what's going on, and a bunch of other different characters. And yeah, this book, I ended up DNFing it at 540 something pages because I was so freaking bored by this. Like I was so bored, nothing really happens in this book, and there's also a trigger warning for a really graphic rape scene that comes out of nowhere, and it's so unnecessary in my opinion. And I just didn't like this book, and it sucks because I started off really enjoying this. I thought it had a lot of potential, and I still think this is a story idea that has a lot of potential, but it just didn't go anywhere. It was just so boring. And yeah, so I ended up giving this one 2 out of 5 stars as well. And then the last book that I picked up in the month of January was The How and the Why by Cynthia Hand. And this one, I actually listened to the audiobook for this, and I don't usually read a lot of young adult anymore, but I saw this book on Kayla's, Books and Lala's favorites from last year. At least I think it was on her favorites from last year, but I just know that she really enjoyed it, and so I just thought, why not? Like, I saw the audiobook was available, so I was like, why not just listen to it? And I'm really happy that this one was actually one that I really enjoyed, and I ended the month on a happy note, thank God. This book was actually really cute because it's this young adult book. We get alternating chapters in this book. One of the chapters is from this 16-year-old girl who's in high school, and she has these 2 incredibly amazing adoptive parents, and then in the alternating chapters we get her birth mother's like letters to her that she wrote when she was born. And it's interesting because our main character has no idea who her birth mother is, and for a while in this book she even has no desire to find her birth mother. I will say I really love stories that focus on mother-daughter relationships, and I feel like this book does that really well because not only is it about the relationship between the birth mother and the daughter, but it's also a really beautiful relationship between our main character and her adoptive mother. And her adoptive mother has a really bad heart and she's gonna need a heart transplant, and there's all this like drama with that in this book that was very heartbreaking to read about. But I just felt really connected to these characters, and I really love reading about adoption. I just think it's so interesting and so fascinating, and I find that they're always really like heartwarming stories to read about, so I really loved that. This book somehow simultaneously manages to be like lighthearted and cute and fluffy, but it also talks about some really hard-hitting topics that are really emotional, and I did cry once at the end of the audiobook. It was just really touching and really beautiful. And yeah, I was super hella surprised by this book. I ended up giving it 4 out of 5 stars, and I just went in like not really knowing what to expect, and I really enjoyed it. So like if you do get the opportunity to listen to this audiobook, I would highly recommend it. I think it's great. Those are all of the books that I read in the month of January. And you know, like I said, January has just been a very mediocre reading month for me, so hopefully things will turn around very soon. I tend to usually be pretty pessimistic about these things, but I am feeling pretty optimistic about my February books. So yeah, please let me know your thoughts if you've read any of these books. Let me know what you think about them, and let me know how many books did you read in January, what was the best book that you read in January, and what was the worst book that you read in January. Easily the best book that I read this month was Long Bright River, but that also might be because of the fact that I didn't have very many to choose from. But I mean, I really did love this book. Like, don't get me wrong, I freaking loved it so much, and I devoured this book so fast even though it's almost 500 pages. Like, I just loved it so much. So this was definitely the highlight of the month for me. Thank you guys so much for watching as always, and I will see you guys very soon with a new video. Bye!